employers, employees, policymakers are all trying to decipher and understand what the 21st century workforce is going to look like. You know, put that against a backdrop of digitalisation and these megatrends around the world. Minister, what do you see as the big issues that are, you know, what are your initial reactions to this idea about the 21st century workforce? What does it look like in your country?
Thank you for this opportunity, the question. In fact, every century brings its challenge, its innovation, and 21st century is important for its technological innovations, and these technological innovations, and mainly the introduction of AI, created a lot of challenges, but every challenges could turn into opportunity if we act jointly. So I think that the most important the challenge in the 21st century for the workforce or the employees and employees is these new technologies. But this technology could be turned into opportunity if we, for example, understand how we should provide trainings, upskilling and reskilling in a way that our employees could occupy these new jobs in order, because according to different predictions, if AI, they say, will create a condition where, according one of the researchers, 85 million jobs will disappear. But at the same time, according to another prediction, another 100 million jobs will be created because of AI. So the task of the governments, policymakers, should be to provide environment for the employees to train themselves, to profilize their professions in order they could grab that new jobs. Recently, we held an international conference in Armenia in participation with the General Director of ILO, and the topic was the social justice and the new technologies. And we decided that we need to act together in order to use AI for the social good. And I am proposing to different governments and to the Indian government as well. I proposed this idea to the Saudi Arabia's Minister of Human Resources, that we need to create AI global coalition for social good. So we policymakers, we need to advise, consult, and to motivate investors to invest in AI in a way in order it create new jobs, new opportunities, and to create social good. And I'm taking this opportunity and to propose this idea to my colleague from Austria. Let's join and to create international AI global coalition. It will be consultation advisory platform where policymakers, the governments can discuss and can turn this challenge into opportunity.
Yeah.
And the most important task to provide such kind of trainings, reskilling, upskilling opportunities, which will increase the productivity. And AI in this turn will be an important, I think, opportunity, not the challenge. It will not so create problem, but instead it will boost sustainable development. So, and will provide economic growth.
Yeah. I really like your talking about AI and the opportunities that come with it. You know, there's this saying that you're not going to lose your job to artificial intelligence, you'll lose your job to someone who uses artificial intelligence. Yeah. And what about you, Minister? What are you seeing in Austria? What are your observations from Europe?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some of the things have been mentioned. The workplace changes quickly. Qualifications that are required change quickly. So skilling, upskilling, reskilling is a task that is both a task that companies have to actually achieve, but it's also for governments. So government policies of reskilling, upskilling, supporting the initiatives of companies, and of course supporting those who lost their job because they are not up to speed with the development, the technological development. That's something I think that will be even more important than it was the last 10 to 20 years. It will of course change also how people work, not only what people work, remote work, new forms of work that make working more flexible, but also bears the risk of course, transgressing what has been private before and non-work areas before. So we have to find new ways of regulating that, but doing it in a way that supports those who are flexible, that are mobile, that give them chances, as you said. But on the other hand, of course, make sure that we protect workers, we protect their health. So there's lots of things to be done. And AI is, of course, an aspect where we'll only see in a couple of years how it will affect the workplace, but the predictions are it will affect the workplace profoundly, and what we work and how we work. But overall, I think we can be optimistic. The last hundreds of years of history have always shown us that technological advance was always a force that created more jobs than it destroyed. But it created, of course, losers and winners, and creating winners, but helping those who lose out is, of course, a task that is not easy. It's a balance that we have to actually achieve as politicians.
It's interesting speaking to politicians about this particular issue because, say, in Australia, the energy transition, the green economy, there are losers. There are workforces in particular areas, particularly a very resources-heavy country. How do we make that transition, and how do you manage that as a political leader? So there's new ways of working, remote working, all those kinds of things, which is interesting. Gig economy, platform working. There are a whole bunch of regulatory issues we could talk about there. But also, how do you go from these older industries and move people into new jobs, while making sure you still get re-elected at the same time? So there are these politicized elements to these workforce transitions. So do you have industries like that in your countries where you're undergoing these major transitions like we are in Australia, or are you largely void of those I guess trends that are happening in your country?
When we coming to this question, when we back to the history, there's an interesting pattern in history.
Yeah.
During the Industrial Revolution, so when the new machines were introduced, so the governments they were afraid of these new technological innovations because they believe that these new technologies will create some kind of social disorder, because when people will lose their jobs, they will be creating some social tension for them. And there is an interesting phrase, creative distraction, when they didn't allow the technologies to come and to replace the order, let's say, modus vivendi. But what happened when the right communication took place? Again, this transition created public good. So if we do not allow this kind of creative distraction, we need to take into consideration this transition seriously, and we have to communicate with our public that this is not the problem. Okay, we got education, for example, 10 years ago, some 15 years ago. We have to rethink our education, our knowledge, because new criteria and new requirements for these technological innovations require us to go and to learn more about these new technologies. So in Armenia, this kind of relations, like a transition from traditional into the new technological, I think in many areas, starting from service to ICT sphere to public health, etc. So in every aspect, education, school educations, university educations, we are applying new technologies, new tools to have much more efficient policies. We're working cooperating with the Asian Development Fund, and Asian Development Fund, in cooperation with the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, piloted an interesting tool, like using AI in evaluating families for the social benefit. So AI is helping us to have targeted decisions, because we have to understand how to effectively use our resources in order to address problems in society. So now these new tools helped us to understand which family needs what kind of services, not just to give money and to keep people rely on the government, but to assess and to understand what is the best service that the family needs. This will make our social protection system much more resilient. So we are using these kind of tools, and we are ready for the transition. But I think the most important thing is communication. We should not let this creative distraction happen again.
I think there is, and you mentioned one of the levers. Education is extremely important. Education at all levels, preparing young people for the workplace of the future, and not only in terms of their skills, but also in terms of their motivation, in terms of how they approach problems, and in terms of the fact that they will probably see rapid transition in the future and will not stay at the same workplace for their entire work life. And they will actually have to acquire more knowledge over their lifetime until retirement and even beyond. So I think that's one of the important aspects. The second one that we are focusing on from a perspective of labor market policy is active labor market policy. And we have ramped up the budgets for active labor market policy, especially in skilling, all the programs that help people actually to reskill and upskill during their lifetime from one sector to the other or within the sector. So having support here is extremely important, because the sectoral mobility has increased, and people actually don't want to stay for 40 years in the same job or 50 years in the same job. They want to they move on. They have different conditions regarding their private lives that lead to different choices in jobs. So I think this is important. Then of course, it's about making sure that we support people in new forms of work. Austria was one of the first countries to introduce a law that governs remote work, a separate law that supports people, that makes sure that this is it's not a regulation in the strict sense that narrows down the opportunities, but it clearly assigns responsibilities to all involved parties, the employers, the employees, and the government, to make sure that everybody knows what he or she can do and what opportunities are out there. But of course, it all only is relevant for about 40% of the workforce. 60% that cannot do remote work. So we shouldn't forget about those who do regular work, who have to go to work.
Absolutely. Yep. There are industries that can't. You can regulate homework all you like, but there are industries, healthcare and others that you need to go to work at the end of the day. That's really interesting, though, that you've actually regulated remote work. Is that right? Yeah, I'm going to look into that, because it's really interesting. I'm going to move the conversation a little bit in a different direction. So Australia is a country that relies heavily on migration, skilled migration in particular. We've been a very resilient economy in many years, and a lot of that's got to do with the people that we bring in for particular roles. This is a really political issue, migration at the moment, and skilled migration and migration for people who are in labour. I wonder if you have any reactions to me mentioning that, because if you think about, the political context in wealthy, high-income countries, and there are, and then there is a big debate globally at the moment around other receiving countries of migrants. When it comes to the workforce, what are you doing in Armenia? What are you doing in Austria? What are your initial reactions to this? Maybe I'll go to Austria first and then Armenia this time. We have a triple A here: Australia, Armenia, Austria. I like that.
So hopefully people don't get confused when they watch that.
I think our accents give it away, so that's good. Yeah.
Happy to do so. So Austria, of course, faces a structural labor shortage. That's clear given demographic developments. So we are becoming more reliant on labor migration. And I think the political discussion has moved on. It was different 10, 15 years ago when unemployment was structurally higher and when it was a different labor market situation. Now, most people know that skilled migration is something that we're going to need, not only for companies, also for the health sector, for other public services, and you have to have a framework in place that governs this migration. What we have in Austria is a framework that is very close to the Canadian one, a point system, where you have to reach a certain number of points depending on your education, depending on your life, in your work experience, and depending on your language knowledge. And if you surpass a certain number of points, you have access to the Austrian labor market from around the world. And I think this is in principle the way to go. And we, of course, always adjusting some little bits and pieces of the system, but it is the way to go. And Austria will, of course, be reliant on labor migration for some time, given that the large cohorts that have been the birth rates have been high in the 60s will be in retirement soon, actually.
Yeah. Probably very similar demographic, I guess, characteristics to a country like Australia.
Absolutely, also Germany, Italy. Lots of European countries have similar demographics.
And what about in Armenia? So how does this play out in Armenia?
So in fact, this issue we consider in Armenia within the context of demographic policy or the strategy of demography, or even we call population demography. So now we are in the process of forming a totally new strategy of demography and strategy of employment. And I just talked to a minister that we are working on a strategy of demography in cooperation with one of the prominent centers in the world, which located in Austria, Wittgenstein Center for Demographic Studies. And it doesn't matter you are a high-income country or you are a developed country, developing country. We share the common problem. So the aging, our communities, our societies are continuing to have much more, let's say, people at the age of the pension. So it means that we have to do different kind of solutions in order to have a balance, demographic balance. And one of the pillars to solve this problem is the migration. And both Austria and Armenia, I think in this regard, they have the same challenge. We have to understand how to trigger, how to support policies which will attract skilled workers to come and to work and to live in our countries, because it will support us to solve this demographic imbalance. So to this end, in our strategy, we already have different kind of tools, like to create incentives for the skilled workers to come to work Armenia, to have some kind of tax privileges for them, to provide educational opportunities for them to come and to work. So we can, for example, target this or that migrants, but we have to make sure that they are ready to come and to learn and to integrate into your society. Without that, I think it will be very difficult for labor migrants to come. But we need regulations. Now we are actively engaging with different countries. We are signing organized labor migration agreements because we have some commitments. We have some conventions signed, international. We are cooperating with ILO. We can't just only came to our countries to work, but we have to make sure that they have decent working conditions. In case of Armenia, we have diaspora. Armenian diaspora. We have 3 million in Armenia, but we have millions living outside of Armenia, and we are targeting these high-skilled Armenians working in different parts, in Austria, in Australia, in US, and we are creating incentives for them according to our new strategy of demography. So birth rate is not the only problem that we want to, but the migration is another problem, and also to keep elderly people active in economy. But
as they age,
when we have these new migrants, high-skilled migrants, we can solve all of these problems together.
Absolutely. It sounds like we're all kind of grappling with very similar challenges in different parts of the world. And we have some of your great Armenian diaspora at our school. My daughter goes to school with family from Armenia, and probably also Austria. We have a lot of Austrians in Australia too. But look, Minister, it's fantastic to speak to you about these issues. There are many things here that we could continue talking about for a very long time, but our time is up. So thank you both for your insights. It is really interesting to hear how we, both grapple with similar issues in different ways, but also kind of the same way as well. There's a lot of shared knowledge that we can work together on. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.